Hello, this is Joe Trahan, welcoming you to the All Me podcast from the Taylor Hooten Foundation, whose mission is to enlighten the world to the truths about appearance and performance-enhancing substances. As the national leader on this subject, they communicate their educational messages through various methods, including this podcast. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show.
Hi, and welcome to the All Me podcast. My name is Tavis Piatoli, sports dietitian for the Taylor Hooten Foundation, and today I'm going to be your host. At some point in your day, have you ever had that feeling like you need a pick-me-up to get through that day? Some people start every morning with a cup of coffee. Others feel the need to grab an energy drink to get a boost to get through their day. But could that energy drink be causing more damage to your body, especially your heart, than you realized? In 2020, the energy drink industry generated $57 million in revenue, and that is expected to grow by 7 to 9% in the next 4 to 5 years. We are now seeing middle school children consuming energy drinks in addition to young athletes using these prior to high intensity competition and exercise, which can pose a significant risk. In this episode, we speak with Dr. John Higgins, sports cardiologist, to discuss his research outcomes on the impact energy drinks have on the cardiovascular system in healthy individuals. Dr. Higgins will discuss what ingredients are in these drinks, which ones may be posing a risk, what did his research determine on cardiovascular health, and would he recommend consumers drink them. Dr. Higgins is a professor of medicine at the McGovern Medical School at the University of Texas. He is also a senior cardiologist at Lyndon B. Johnson General Hospital and director of exercise physiology at Memorial Hermann Institute for Sports Medicine and Human Performance. He is also a sports cardiologist with the Houston Rockets and Rice Athletics. He has appeared over 700 times on local TV and radio, including CNN and ABC World News. He is the author of 3 books, 2 book chapters, 55 manuscripts, and 308 web publications, and 16 abstracts. We'd also like to thank our partners at Gatorade for sponsoring this podcast. Hey, Dr. Higgins, welcome to the All Me podcast. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Tavis, for having me.
Absolutely. It's an honor, and I know we have a lot to discuss. We're really going to dive into your work and your research. And really, my first question, is really centered around your interest. What expressed your interest? Because energy drinks are consumed by so many people. This is a massive $57 billion industry. What expressed your interest to focus on some of your research effects on the energy drink industry and how they may affect someone's health? What got your interest there?
I was first interested, Tavis, in the sudden cardiac death in the younger athletes. And so I was part of a team where we would actually go in and screen young athletes in schools. I mean, by young, I mean, kids who are in middle school, 12-year-olds. And we would actually, what we were seeing, and which was being seen around the country, was that some of these young kids and teens were playing sports and having a sudden cardiac death. And it's like, a tragedy. And everyone's like, well, how could that happen? They got checked, by their doctor or the nurse before they played. And so what it was that, a lot of the conditions that these kids have, underlying conditions that can cause sudden cardiac death, are not picked up by just talking to them or doing a physical. And so we developed a system whereby we did a history, physical, an ECG or an electrocardiogram, which is electrical tracing of the heart, as well as an ultrasound echocardiogram on the heart. And what we found with our experience, we picked up a lot of kids that were quote unquote normal. And so anyway, that was kind of one of the interests I had. And then we started hearing about that there were some kids that were having sudden cardiac deaths that were consuming energy drinks. And so that was kind of the overlap. And then, so I started getting interested in that and, looking into, well, is there something in the energy drinks that might be causing this as a problem? And so we, first of all, we looked in the literature. There wasn't a lot. So we did a review paper and that was published in Mayo Clinic Proceedings. And it got a lot of interest. We got a lot of people connecting with us, asking us, do you have any more information? Should we limit energy drinks for kids? And then at the same time, in other parts of the world, in Europe, they were starting to limit them. Health Canada was looking at it because they were seeing that there were some issues with energy drinks. And so that's got me interested here, with energy drinks, and we started to look, and we hypothesized that energy drinks might be having an acute effect both on the vascular function and on, heart rate and blood pressure. And so that kind of led to us doing our research on our young, healthy medical students.
So before we kind of dive into that research, kind of explaining what the outcomes were, some people get confused when we do a presentation. They're like, well, define energy drinks, because some people might think they're sports drinks. So what classifies something as an energy drink?
Okay, well, to be classified as an energy drink, it tends to have three kind of major components. One is they have very high levels of caffeine. Number two, they have high levels of glucose and glucuronolactone, which is a glucose precursor. And then thirdly, they have this quote unquote energy blend, which typically contains very high levels of vitamins, as well as other things that actually contain caffeine, like guarana, like ephedra, or other caffeine, theobromine, etc. So you're getting a very large energy hit. A lot of these vitamins and other components like taurine and a lot of glucose. So that distinguishes it in that a sports drink, typically a sports drink has a little bit of glucose and a little bit of electrolytes to replace the body salts lost. And comparing that again to a soda, which typically has very low levels of caffeine and a little bit of flavoring, and then comparing that to coffee, which has moderate levels of caffeine, but the coffee bean we know has a lot of other good antioxidants. So that's kind of really distinguishing energy drinks. And most of the time, they will actually on their product labeling, Tavis, they will say, to boost performance, or to boost your energy. So energy is often used in their product placement and advertising.
Excellent. Yeah, these multi-stimulant, I know we're going to dive into that, but that seems to be that risk factor. And as we dive into your research, you said you studied healthy medical students. So let's talk about those significant findings. What did you find how was the study designed first, but also what did you find? What were the outcomes that you guys saw from this study?
So what we decided to do, Tavis, was we wanted to, look at those things that we were hypothesizing. That is, what effect does energy drinks or consuming energy drinks acutely have on a young, healthy person that actually, has and is known to be, healthy and not taking anything else. And so we looked at, okay, what are the things that we can measure fairly easily? So we did, an ECG before and after. We checked their heart rate and blood pressure before and after. And then we also did a more sophisticated evaluation where we actually looked at their, what we call brachial artery reactivity, which is essentially how their brachial artery in their arm, how it looks before and how it reacts before to a stimulus that would normally cause it, to vasodilate, and then how it reacts afterwards, after the energy drink. And so we, got about 50 medical students. It was, a mix of boys and girls, and they had to be not taking any medications. They couldn't be smoking. They couldn't have had any recent caffeine within the past 24 hours, or of course, be a regular energy drink consumer. And then what we did is we did all of those measurements, and then we had them consume a 24-ounce Monster energy drink, which has 240 milligrams of caffeine, as well as those other ingredients. And then we measured about 90 minutes later, we measured those parameters again. And what we did see were, their heart rate and blood pressure did go up. Their ECG parameters actually did not really change that much. We were particularly interested in a parameter called QTC, or the repolarization timing, and others have shown an increase in that. We really did not see that. We didn't see a significant change in that. We did see a significant reduction in their ability of their artery to dilate in response to a dilate stimulus. I mean, literally, going from kind of normal to significantly reduced, down at least 50% reduction. And this was, done with very sophisticated equipment, and it was with automatic border tracking. So it was not our manual measurements; it was the machine actually measuring it 4 times. So this was very, very accurate data, and this is consistent with what others have in the field have found.
So we see a significant reduction in blood flow, vasodilation, of that artery. And you mentioned these drinks can have multiple ingredients, and I think most people don't even realize what they're putting in their body. So, and it might be hard to try to know this right now, and you may know this answer, but is there a specific ingredient or ingredients that concern you the most in these products that could be causing this?
Well, I think that the ones that we're concerned about, Tavis, are the very high levels of the caffeine and the taurine. So there's been a couple of studies that have shown that the taurine may somehow interact with the caffeine to where both of their effects are kind of accentuated. And also the taurine in high levels, which are found in the energy drinks, can definitely get the heart to sort of work harder, really, than it needs to at that level of work. So it's almost like, turbocharging the heart when it really doesn't need to be. Our kind of hypothesis is that on the one hand, we know that you're reducing their ability of the arteries to dilate. So what happens when you exercise? The usual thing when you exercise is, the heart works harder, and to compensate for that, the coronary arteries, or the arteries on the heart, open up, up to about 400%, increase the flow, because, now that your heart muscle is working harder, you have to get, more oxygen, more nutrients to the heart muscle. So what we're wondering is, okay, what if you make the heart work harder, but at the same time, you actually limit the amount of blood flow to the heart? That's in adults, that's the typical thing we see when there is what we call a supply-demand imbalance. And that's when people, for example, that have narrowing of the arteries, atherosclerosis, coronary artery disease, that's when they get chest pain. That's when they get, bad irregular heart rhythms. And that's when they can actually collapse and have an arrest. And so we were seeing some of the same symptoms, in some of these kids that were, especially when they chugged down fast, more than one energy drink. Some of the reports were saying that the kids were having chest pain. Some of them were saying they were having palpitations, prior to their, cardiac arrest. So that's one of our current hypotheses. Others have also, contributed some evidence to that as well. One of the things we haven't even talked about, Tavis, is, well, okay, we know that these things are happening like acutely. What about those people that are chronically using energy drinks?
Yeah, and I'm assuming that's something that hasn't been studied yet, is because, and I know that's one of my questions, but let's get to it now. So you studied one drink, correct? You just looked at the effect of one drink. We've had kids in our programs come up to us, 14, 18, 16 years old. Hey, I consume 3 and 4 of these a day. We see adults. I had a gentleman like, I'm consuming 5 or 6 a day. And I'm assuming there's no studies yet to look at that chronic consumption, or has there been any data to look at that?
Well, there's a little bit of data on blood pressure, Tavis, and actually there's been some studies where even as short as a few weeks, people's blood pressure, a week later, when they've stopped the energy drink, is actually bumped up a level. So there's also quite a little bit in the animal literature, Tavis. Look, for example, rat models, sheep, several other animals that other mammals, and they actually have found that, in as short a period as a month of having the equivalent of basically an energy drink a day, these rats and other mammals have actually shown structural changes in their heart muscle, which are not good. The main issue is they get glycogen accumulation, like excess in the heart muscle itself. And so these authors propose that in someone who is chronically consuming energy drinks, that extra accumulation, if that is happening, in humans, that could certainly make the heart stiffer. It could also increase the chance that they could have irregular heart rhythms. It certainly could elevate blood pressure. There's also been some studies chronically showing that it has abnormal effects on cholesterol, as well as definitely increasing blood sugar levels, which is, not too surprising because they are often loaded with glucose, and increasing obesity. So, these are some of the things that concern us in individuals consuming them on a, some of them, like you said, multiple on a daily basis. And there's been a couple of, rare case reports of people running into real problems with high levels of consumption.
Yeah, and I think one of the questions I've seen and we get a lot is how soon can someone start to experience side effects? And I'm sure this depends on a lot of different factors, but could we see side effects within a few weeks, a few months after consuming these on a regular basis?
Absolutely. Like I said, the data on blood pressure is as early as several weeks of continuous consumption, and that the animal data on the excess glycogen that tends to be about a month, and certainly acutely we have seen pretty major side effects from these from people consuming them. I mean, there's been lots of reports of this as well. The things that are all coming together here, Tavis, are on the one hand, you've got that supply demand that we just talked about. The energy drinks are making the cardiovascular system work harder at the same level. So if you got two people, one of them is not drinking energy drinks, one of them is drinking energy drinks, and they're doing the same activity, well, the energy drink one will have a higher heart rate and blood pressure at the same level. Okay. So that's number one. Number two is that we're starting to learn they're having all of these other, effects. Hypercoagulability has been very well described. They not only do they dehydrate, but they seem to increase the coagulation in the wrong direction. So, you got someone who's got a supply demand imbalance, and then you've got dehydration and hypercoagulability. And so it's not surprising that we have had these cases. We even had it here in Houston at the marathon, where oftentimes people, especially people that are, first timers, or they haven't done a lot of the training, they often do hit the energy substances during the marathon. And we've had heart attacks. And the last one that we had here, which was pre-pandemic, it was a 40-something-year-old, and they actually, were life flighted to the hospital. This was at around about, I think, the 15 or 18 mile mark. And they had been using energy drinks. And they actually, when they went in, the arteries of the heart were actually okay themselves, but they were clogged up with clot. So they had actually had a huge, which resulted in a myocardial infarction, a heart attack. Right. And they had to get all of that clot out. And there's been several other cases. And what they found consistently in these cases, Tavis, is that these individuals tended to be somewhat dehydrated, and they had very high levels of caffeine and taurine in their bloodstreams. So the thought is that there's something about the combination of all of those things in the energy drink that is just not good for the human body, especially when it's actually exerting itself. Which is unfortunately, a lot of where these products are being used. I mean, most people, if they're going to go out, running or doing extreme sports, you don't see them sipping a cup of Joe. Okay. I mean, you see them chugging. And this is where a lot of it's happening, Tavis. You've got young, healthy kids, and they're chugging them down. And, oftentimes it's not just one, and they are doing sports and extreme sports. And this is what, I want your all's audience to get. We don't think that's safe.
Not at all.
Go for your sports drinks, go for your water. Even if you want to have, an iced coffee. I mean, those things seem to be okay and safe. But when you get into the energy drink spectrum, there's something that really, really, nasty is happening. We still don't understand it. Like you said before, we're starting to get more data on the acute effects, but the long-term effect, that's what I'm really worried about, because imagine you've got a population, Tavis, that, is consuming things that are going to increase their blood pressure, make their cholesterol worse, make their blood sugar diabetes worse, over time, that could translate into individuals getting coronary artery disease, a decade earlier. So that's what, as a cardiologist, I'm really concerned about these individuals that are drinking them, on a regular basis. And I want to let them know, hey, this is not, a Monster, or an energy drink in the morning, a Red Bull. That's not the same as a coffee, and you should not substitute that. These are different beasts.
People ask me all the time as a sports dietitian, what's your favorite pre-workout? I'm like, right now I'm drinking beets. I take a scoop of beet powder and drink it with my water. And I know that has some good evidence. And it kind of leads me to my next question. Could we see, with regular consumption, could we see permanent or irreversible damage on the heart from consuming these?
Well, again, based on animal models, the concern is that, you could have structural things happening. I mean, certainly acutely, that's no question. There have been several case reports. There was an individual who was consuming quite a lot, a young girl consuming quite a lot, and she had developed POTS, or postural tachycardic syndrome, whereby her cardiovascular system did not respond properly, to exertion, and she became very symptomatic. And she had been consuming them for several months. We've had individuals that have developed atrial fibrillation who have been consuming energy drinks. Again, whenever someone's heart rate is unexpectedly going up and they've got some sort of chemical driving that, whether it be ephedra or something else, that can increase their chance of atrial fibrillation. When people's blood pressure is chronically elevated, that results in the left atrium, the chamber of the heart, getting extra pressure. It dilates, that increases the risk for atrial fibrillation. So there are definitely some areas of concern. And yes, I think that my advice would be, try to avoid them at all costs. But, if you really have had no problems with them before, and you want to, occasionally have one, and you're not going to be exercising or doing extreme exercising, that may be okay. But the issue is, Tavis, we don't have the safety and efficacy data. All we have are mainly industry sponsored studies, showing their benefits. And I mean, they do have a lot of caffeine. So, they can, of course, if you got two groups of truck drivers and one of them you give water to, and they've been, awake for 48 hours, and one of them you give water to, and one of them you give energy drink to, well, of course, the one you give energy drink to is going to perform better. Right. So, these are the sort of studies that are out there where they are obviously designed to show, the major benefits of the energy drinks. But, not all studies have shown that. And some of the non-industry sponsored studies have shown problems, like the US Air Force did a study, and they actually found their pilots' reactions were worse and that they were jittery. And so they actually, banned them. The US Navy has banned from all of their pilots consumption of energy drinks for 72 hours before they fly. So there is a lot in the study area. There are some mainly positive studies, which are mainly industry sponsored, and then there are negative studies, which are mainly non-industry sponsored. So whenever I see that, I always kind of get suspicious that, maybe the truth is somewhere in between, but it's not, there's something not right. And it also tells me we need to do larger, bigger, and, very randomized and well-controlled studies, Tavis.
I know we just have a few minutes left, and I just have a couple of questions. So you can kind of answer this a little bit. And we get a lot of questions about, well, is there a safe way to consume this? Like you mentioned, maybe one drink a week or in moderation, but should we avoid these altogether? I mean, would it be, beneficial for someone who is struggling, and could they have addictive behaviors as well? I've seen some people say, look, I can't get off these things. I'm craving them more and more.
Yeah. Actually, Tavis, that has been studied, and you are right on. They actually do have addictiveness. And in fact, people that are drinking energy drinks on a semi-regular basis are more likely, they're actually been referred to as a gateway to go into higher level illegal drugs, such as cocaine, such as methamphetamine, et cetera. So definitely, my advice would be this: to your listeners. First of all, if you want to be safe, I would avoid them altogether. Okay. If you're going to go long when you're exercising, and by that I mean, an hour or more, most studies have shown, especially if you're going to be sweating a lot, and you're wanting to maintain the energy. Most studies have shown that beyond an hour, sports drinks will definitely give you a benefit. They give you a little bit of energy through the glucose, and they help replace the electrolytes, so you don't get cramps and other muscle fatigability, and your performance does not degrade as much as if you were just water only. So that would be my advice. Certainly, for right now, what we recommend is anyone under 18, anyone who is pregnant or thinks they're pregnant, anyone, in a vulnerable population. For example, they may have a caffeine sensitivity, or they may be taking medications for their heart, or they may be taking, might be a kid, for example, that has ADD and is taking a stimulant. All of those sort of individuals, we recommend completely avoid at all costs. For a healthy adult that, like we talked about before, that is rarely consuming some of these, and has not had any problems and feels okay, no symptoms, side effects, once in a while without exercise, without doing any exercise, may be okay, but definitely avoid on a regular basis. And, we want to also get the message out there that it's not good to, be marketing these to those vulnerable populations that we talked about. And, in terms of the other things, I mean, like we said, coffee right now, our latest data is showing that for adults, we are finding that those adults that actually do drink regular coffee on a regular basis actually may be beneficial to them, as long as they don't have any other, cardiovascular or high blood pressure, et cetera. So coffee looks like it's in. Tea looks like it's in as well. I mean, it certainly has some benefits. Sports drinks, if you're going particularly long, endurance events, are absolutely fine, and we would recommend and encourage. Water, if you're just doing a regular workout and it's not too long, that's absolutely fine. And soda, well, it's hit and miss. I mean, right now, regular soda is loaded with sugar. So if you're working out for half an hour, and you drink a soda, then you've just wasted your time, because you're going to be at energy in equals energy out.
Right.
But even the diet sodas, we are finding there's more and more evidence, Tavis, showing that actually those are not healthy either. So we would kind of avoid those. And then you've got that whole other group of materials that's out there, things like muscle milk and some of those other products that have some type of glucose in them, and they may have a little bit of amino acids or some protein. Those look like they're also okay. And can certainly help with recovery. Myself, when I go for a long run, I actually my favorite is I get chocolate milk, like a low-fat chocolate milk, and I put half in and then half skim milk, and that's what I use. And you got plenty of glucose, you got protein.
Yep.
So whatever it is that you want to use for your recovery, but whatever you do, I would say for now, until we get more evidence, it's best to avoid these energy drinks, and for that matter, some of the other, I mean, definitely the energy shots. I mean, they're even worse. I think
they're a lot more concentrated in that small 2 or 3 ounce serving.
Yeah. So I mean, avoid those, and some of the other energy products. And if you're not sure, just talk to your sports medicine people or your physicians and providers, and for other ways that can help. But in the long run, Tavis, I mean, it's really your performance is not going to be determined by something, a tablet or a drink you take. I mean, it's really going to come down to, have you put in the hard work, done those intervals, at 2 a.m. in the morning, whatever you're doing.
Good diet.
I mean, it's hard work and long-term changes, which are hard, that will get you over the finish line first.
My last question, I know you have to go, but
yeah,
pre-workout supplements, right? They're just like energy drinks, but in powder. They have the caffeine, the taurine, the multiple stimulants. I'm seeing so many high school athletes and kids, adults, taking a scoop or two of this right before they work out. I'm assuming this can have the same type of outcome on endothelial function, cardiovascular.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Tavis. And I believe the FDA actually, put a statement a little while back on that, recommending against use of these little kind of pouches and powders that you can get, and you can get them online. We looked online and we saw one that was claiming, that 400 to 500 milligrams of caffeine, in this little tiny, with one spoon. And I was like, oh my God,
Wow. Yeah.
So yeah, I think, just to be sensible about it. And, if someone, in the gym tells you, hey, look, I can do this much more than you. And this is what my secret, and they give you something. I mean, do not just say, look, I'm good. I'm happy with my performance and I'll just work harder.
Dr. Higgins, thank you for the time. I know you're super busy. Honored to have you here. This was phenomenal information. I know this is probably going to save some lives for people that are listening, that are addicted, that are struggling and trying to find ways to get off. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to join us on the All Me podcast.
Well, thank you, Tavis, and best of luck to all of your listeners.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, sir.
Okay, you too.
Well, that's it for today's show. Thanks for listening to the All Me podcast from the Taylor Hooten Foundation, a nonprofit organization leading a national campaign to enlighten people to the truths about appearance and performance-enhancing substances and inspiring people to live and compete without the use of these substances. Please be sure to subscribe to our podcast and tune in to our next episode.